It is the high holy time. And we come together to celebrate Ramadan, right? Well, if you're Islamic, you do. Ramadan actually means hot mouth, literally. And it's a time of fasting. It's actually where Muslims fast from sunup to sundown, not a bite. Yeah, pray extra, like Muslims don't pray enough. And the idea is that it makes you more spiritual, right? Great idea. Okay, we'll talk more about Islam later. If that doesn't work for you, how about Happy Passover? Passover is certainly to experience the memory of the Jewish people being able to leave slavery of Egypt and create their own nation. Important time in the Jewish faith. No? Okay, all right. How about Easter? Well, okay, yeah, that was some nice golf clapping. So the Easter obviously is the high holy day of Christendom. It's the time that the life of Jesus is celebrated. He is said to have been arrested in Jerusalem, tried, convicted, and crucified, put on a Roman cross to die. And it's said that he did die. And that they buried him, and on the third day, as it goes, he rose from the dead. And because of that, you can go to heaven. That works for some people, and I don't mock it. It's just not something that we're into here. We're not looking for an outside God to save us. That's not what we believe. But the fact is that our faith, which we call the science of mind, actually allows us to have the benefit of virtually all world religions, at least the 7 main ones. And that's what I want to talk about today, because I think that if you're in a situation with a friend or a colleague and they say, "Where do you go to church?" And you say, "Well, I go to that Center for Spiritual Living in Asheville." And they go, "What do they believe?" Some people get stuck there. But the truth is that there are threads that run through science of mind that connect us to all the religions of the world. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at the 7 major religions of the world and look at how we may align with that. And we're going to do them kind of in chronological order from when they were conceived. And we're going to start with Hinduism. Hinduism, the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. Well, the truth is that knowledge is incredibly important to us. Now, the exact knowledge may be a little different, but I want you to know that our founder, Ernest Holmes, spent a lot of time studying Hinduism and found some great truths there. Things that are worth knowing and things that one can do. So what I want to present to you out of Hinduism is the 4 fundamental intentions of this faith, this oldest of the major faiths in the world. The first one is Dharma. And Dharma is about taking responsibility for one's role in life. That should not sound foreign to anyone that's sitting in this room that has ever read any of Ernest Holmes' work or come to the center and heard the messages that we present. We want to take responsibility for our life in a meaningful and productive way. Now, how it's done in Hinduism may be a little different than how we do it, but that's fine. We're all wanting to take responsibility for our role in life. And that has everything to do with having the sense of a successful, meaningful life. We're very much aligned with that. The second fundamental intention is called Artha, living according to one's purpose. Now, if you've been around me very long at all, you know that I hold the idea of knowing and living by one's purpose as a major idea in life, that if you don't know your purpose, then you're just kind of wandering around doing whatever comes to mind. But if you do, if you've looked deeply inside of your experience of life, your very being, you know that purpose says it all. It says that we are here for a specific reason. And when we do things according to that, our lives tend to work out. We tend to be happy. And when we do other things that aren't in alignment with that, it tends to go the other way. I've taught that every summer in the summer prosperity class for over 20 years. So that aligns us very nicely with the teachings of the Hindu faith. The third one is kama, love, desire, and passion for life. Certainly, love is important to us. It's one of our shared values. It's on the back wall. The idea of love is essential to the human experience. Now, not everybody agrees on what love is and how it works, but we find it in our faith as being not only fundamental, but also being ubiquitous, being absolutely present everywhere and always, just like God. Oh, maybe God and love are the same thing. What a concept. But by doing that and being aware of that, we live passionate, meaningful lives. That's important to us in the science of mind, and it is clearly important in the faith of Hinduism. And the final one is moksha, freedom achieved through the fully expressed life. And that's what we seek to do, is live that fully expressed life. Now, in Hinduism, that goes into multiple lives. And I don't care whether you believe in reincarnation or not. I happen to believe in it. I don't get how we could be eternal beings and just have one body. I'll go with one body at a time. But beyond that, I think that if we're eternal, we got to keep moving in and out of the physical experience. And that's just a natural part of it. That doesn't make me Hindu. But that does align me with the idea that where we're going is we're evolving through these lives, or at least through an individual life, to a greater understanding of ourselves and our place in all of creation. So not that far off, right? Kind of aligns with things that we hold dear in our teaching of the science of mind. That's Hinduism. Taoism. Why, in English, it was spelled with a T instead of a D, I'll never understand. But it's called the Tao, and that's the path to ultimate reality. That's what it's referred to. And there are in Tao an emphasis of harmony. And Tao means the way, that everyone's seeking to understand the way to move through life. And these are the principles that follow. Effortless action. Now you may say, what does that have to do with science of mind? It has everything to do with science of mind. If you have studied our form of prayer, our affirmative prayer called spiritual mind treatment, when you get to that third step, when you've done the first step of recognizing the presence of the divine as best you can in the moment, and then you move to step 2 and you say, if God is all, then I must be that. I cannot be separate from that. And we move into the third step, and the third step I like to call realization. And realization is that creative moment where we're impressing upon spiritual law that not just what we desire, but what we know to be true. We realize that it's true. How hard is it to realize something? I just realized. It's easy. It's effortless. And it changes everything. When we have a realization of truth, our whole perspective of life can shift. When we realize, even though life is showing us this physical aspect that we don't particularly like, when we realize that's not the truth of us, those are just facts. But there's something greater in who we are. When we realize that, without any effort, spiritual law takes that and creates that we know to be so into our lives. It is effortless action. Alignment with nature. Well, we've found very clearly that when we try to work against nature, when we try to do things that are unnatural in living our lives, we suffer. So that being aware of that natural state of life is valuable to those of us who practice and study the science of mind as it is to those who practice and study the Tao. Hit the right button. There we go. Simplicity. I've been saying for years that there's power in simplicity. and that this teaching is so simple. It is not. And that's why I say that being a minister in the science of mind is one of the most challenging, because we have such a simple philosophy, yet I need to speak of it differently every time I get up here. That takes some work to be creative that way. There's not a whole lot to it. There's only one thing going on. It's God. And if we would simply remember that all the time, this thing of practicing the science of mind would be simple. So we seek that. Whether we get there or not is quite another question. And then the final one is spontaneity. And I think that's true of all life, is that it's our job to be spontaneous, to be prepared for whatever comes, and to not let something overwhelm us and take us into a state of despair or confusion, that we can be spontaneously present to everything that happens and know just what to do because of the simplicity of our teaching. So I think we line up very nicely with the Tao. That's the second one. The next one is shamanism and the traditions of the indigenous people. Now, I am not an expert on this, but I have spent quite a number of years studying the teachings of the indigenous people of North America. I have not studied those of South America or Africa or other parts of the world. But what I am told is that most of those teachings align, that they have different practices, different rituals, but that much of what people who are the people of the earth believe and use is pretty much the same. So my work with Native American people has been a very powerful thing in my life, and I have had a great learning from that. And one of the things that came to me very clearly early on was, this isn't really different than the science of mind. That basically people who live in those indigenous cultures and practice those rituals, the rituals very different. They're very different. They actually work. We saw there about the things being easy in other faiths. In this one, they actually go out of their way to make it hard. They do things like sweat lodges, where you go into this hut that is completely sealed, and these glowing hot rocks come into the middle, and then the one called the water pour does exactly that, pours water over it. And this is once the room is completely sealed, and that steam comes up and hits you. And in the midst of all that, you're supposed to pray. Trust me, that's not easy. But what happens in the way it's seen by these good people is that if you can pray through that and mean it, then you can pray through anything. You know, it's kind of the stuff we've done here for years with our fire walks, where we've given people the opportunity to walk on a glowing hot fire, take 3, 4, 5 steps through an incredibly hot surface and be unscathed by it. How do you do that? You know, if you went and just touched one of those logs in there at any point, you'd get a blister. But you can walk through it and be completely safe. It's the same idea. It's transcending the physical and being present in the spiritual realm, knowing that you are greater than anything you could face in your life that you would call a problem. That's the way the science of mind works. There's nothing that can't be resolved. There's nothing that can't be reconciled and completely turned around. And as the shamanic teachers have their rituals and all this amazing stuff that they do, they are practitioners in the same way that we are practitioners. They are practicing an awareness of spirit. And the power of that is incredibly valuable. So we align, I think, beautifully in my own personal experience with shamanic teachings. Then we have Judaism, the path of living according to sacred law. And if you study Judaism, you know that those things written in their holy books are held as sacred, and they are to be followed to a T. That's the path. That's the liberation, is to follow the law that they teach. Well, law is important to us in Science of Mind as well. Incredibly important, because we understand that spiritual law is absolute, no exceptions. Human law is different. People gather in legislatures and they agree that something should not be allowed to happen, and when it does happen, someone would be punished. And they give that to the judicial system and law enforcement. And if you do any of those things that are forbidden, you can be arrested, you can be charged, you can be convicted, you can go into a penitentiary. I have a personal feeling about this whole thing where people lament that we have more people in prison in the United States than any other country in the world, and that somehow we're wrong about that. I believe that the reason we have so many people in prison is because we have a free society where everybody gets to do what they want. And people don't remember how to hold back from crossing those lines and getting in trouble and ending up in prison. That, and if we were to be authoritarian the way many other parts of the world are, where they know that if you do something, you're just going to pay dearly, an eye for an eye type of thing. And people resist that because of fear. We're a free society, that we don't have that issue. But in spiritual law, it's different. Spiritual law calls us to the highest form of living, the greatest way of being present in the world. And by knowing the truth of who we are able to create the life that we want. That's a very different set of circumstances. But it works in reverse as well. If you lament and find problems and get angry and do things that don't support moving into the better part of life, you end up with challenges. They come to you right away. In our teaching, we don't have to wait for a heaven or hell. It's right away. Instant karma. Yeah. Whatever it takes, we're going to experience it by our thinking and our actions. So the idea of law is essential in the science of mind, as it is essential in the Jewish faith. Buddhism, the path of liberation. I love that idea of the path of liberation. I love it because it's saying that we, by following a path, can be freed from all of the pain and suffering of life. And the teachings of the Buddha are just that way. They start by saying that life is suffering. Because in the time of the Buddha, life was suffering. Everybody suffered unless you lived in a palace. And probably people were suffering in there too. And his whole life was about opening up the possibility from the original teachings of the Hindu into this idea of something lighter, something more wonderful. And there are principles that are followed in this teaching. The practices of the Buddhists include dharma. We've heard of that already. That comes out of the Hindu faith, that ours is to live a meaningful life. Yes, we're all here to live a meaningful life. Okay. I'm going to start with Sangha here. Sangha is the teaching that community is important. We even, in this community, have what we call Sangha circles, where we come together for the purpose of connection. Sangha is valuable. We are not here to live this life alone. We are not here to be by ourselves. We're here to be with one another, to learn from one another, and to teach one another. And don't think you're not a teacher as much as you are a student of life. You are. Everybody that comes into my life is my teacher, especially the ones that really tick me off. Because they're showing me something that I need to work out in me if I can get angry with them. Sangha is an important part of life, and we practice that here. Especially when we say things like, life is better when we're together. It's important. Renunciation of cravings and attachment. Well, Ernest Holmes taught this thing called turn away from the condition. And often the reason that we have a condition in our lives that we don't want is that we've had some thoughts about something that align with that condition. We thought things weren't going to work out. We thought things were wrong. We thought someone was bad. And when we fall into that trap, we get a result that we don't like. And then we go, oh, this is terrible. Well, Holmes said turn away from that. He said, put your attention on the thing you desire, the way you want life to be. See that as your reality, which I think is very much in alignment with what was taught by the Buddha. Meditation. So meditation is a practice in the science of mind as much as it is in Buddhism. I wish we practiced it more. I know that many of you have a regular practice of meditation, and the value of that, of course, is the stilling of the mind so that you can allow yourself to move into a state of balance and a greater ability to function in life. It's a great thing to do. Perhaps we'll pick it back up in May and have the opportunity to do a meditation together. But meditation is listed as one of the spiritual practices of the science of mind. And it, of course, is highly valued in Buddhism. And the last one, the cultivation of wisdom, loving kindness, and compassion. And I would absolutely say that our teaching calls us to be wise, to be kind, and to be compassionate to one another. That when we are not living according to the teachings that we have been so wonderfully given by our founder, Ernest Holmes. So to me, Buddhism aligns with the science of mind beautifully on many levels. Ah, yes, Christianity, the path of love and forgiveness. Love and forgiveness, which is kind of a tricky idea for me, having grown up in a fundamentalist environment where I was told that if I didn't do what they said, that I would burn in hell. But those of us who have experienced Christianity as our primary faith know that we're asked to forgive those that have somehow offended us. And of course, Jesus spoke to that brilliantly in his Sermon on the Mount. He said that was our job, to forgive those that had trespassed against us, that had done something that we thought was inappropriate. He said a lot of things. Jesus was a brilliant teacher. And as I think I've already started to talk about, we in this faith don't embrace much of the story around his birth and much of the story around his death. But between those 2 points, this man was a brilliant teacher that I'm certain came to this planet to make a massive difference. And it's sad to me that some people still claim that faith and yet find themselves highly in judgment of one another, find themselves doing things that really don't align with who Jesus said this was all about. Let me give you some examples. Just in the book of Matthew, Jesus is said to have taught repentance. That means turning away from what doesn't work. He taught to live by his example. And if you look at how Jesus lived his life, he didn't blame, he did blame a couple of people. He wasn't happy in the temple. But for the most part, he found no fault in people that had done things that were willing to let go of that and change their lives. He was quite brilliant at that. He said the kingdom of heaven is at hand, meaning you don't have to wait for the good of life, that it's right here, right now. It's for all of us. In the 4th chapter of Matthew, he said, be compassionate, help the poor, the downtrodden, and those who are outcasts. That's incredibly valuable. When we assist others in living a better life, we are lifted up as much as anyone has lifted, as much as anything we have done to lift up others. In the 9th chapter, he says, having faith, it is enough to heal anything. We believe that too. If you have a faith in the presence of the divine and know that that presence dwells at the point of view and that spiritual law is absolute, anything can change. In the 6th chapter, he said, be sincere, don't be a hypocrite. That's good advice for anyone on the planet. He said, we are all one with God. That was in Matthew 10. He taught, when people asked him how to pray, he said, our Father. He didn't say my Father. He said, our Father, meaning that the deity that he imagined was connected to everyone. Good start for 2,000 years ago. He invited everyone to love their enemies. And he said, you must become like a child to enter the kingdom. In other words, if you have all the trappings of adulthood, of finding fault, of blaming, of doing all the things that adults can do, that you won't find that presence. You won't find that kingdom of heaven because you're resisting it with your thinking. I think our teaching aligns beautifully. And if you read The Science of Mind, you can't go 2 pages without having Ernest make reference to Jesus. It's quite brilliant. Yet we're not a Christian movement, unless you want it to be. You know, some people say we are. It's fine. I don't care. But truly, I see Christianity, for many of its aspects, to be in alignment with what we teach and having value for all of us. And Islam, the seventh, the path of spiritual discipline. Oh my goodness, is this spiritual discipline. It's very clear to me if you study Islam at all that it's all about discipline. It's about disciplining yourself to be the best person that you can be. That's the real work. Now, are there radical Islamists that don't follow that? Of course. But the general core of the teaching is follow these rules, do these things again and again and again. And there's something to that. There's something to that. Let's see what the 5 pillars of Islam are. And I'll tell you up front that I don't agree with all of them, but we get off on a good start here. Absolute faith in God. Now, we may have a different picture of what the divine is, but having an absolute faith in that presence is essential in the science of mind. It's as essential here as it is in Islam. It's essential. You must know that there is one presence and one power. We start virtually every prayer that we do with that, to remember that that's the truth, that that's the greatest truth, is there's only one thing going on. So we may not see it exactly the same way, but boy, we do see it as essential. Muslims pray 5 times a day. They roll out their prayer mat, they face it toward the city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and they get on their knees and put their head to the floor and they pray. I wish we prayed that much. But yet we do hold prayer as essential in living the spiritual life. Not that we're asking anyone for anything. Ours is a prayer of knowing. Ours is a prayer of remembering and holding true this idea of a divine presence that dwells at the point of us. It's true, this idea of spiritual law that we can hold as being absolute and taking our words and our thoughts and our actions and creating them into the reality of our lives. And this is what Islam is based on. These are their 2 primary. Now, their other 3, charity, which is lovely, although we don't talk about it a lot here, and important. Fasting, which we don't talk about. In fact, we're eaters. Okay, but the truth is that many people claim that fasting has a great value in spiritual unfoldment in people's lives. And then, of course, they have a pilgrimage to Mecca, which they hold as sacred. So just going with the first 2, going with absolute faith in God and prayer, is enough connection for me to know that we hold in alignment with the people of Islam, the importance of those sacred actions. And that's what we have for Islam. And then, of course, there's us. Now, we are not one of the 7 greatest religious faiths in the world. In fact, I don't even think of us as a religion. I think of us more as a spiritual philosophy of ideas that we can use to live our lives better, to open up to the possibilities, and to not ever wither back against whatever we're facing, but know that our God is bigger than whatever our condition may be. And I call it the divine path of love and law. And I call it the divine path because we believe that God is all there is. I don't know that anybody shares that with us out of the metaphysical realm of New Thought. But we do. We believe that the path is divine because all is divine. Everything is divine. Even the stuff that we don't want is divine. Yet we have absolute say over our lives. And our experience is sacred and holy no matter what. So we are not separate from them. And what I might suggest is if somebody asks you what you believe, you could honestly tell them that we have within our faith aspects of every major religion, that we are a universal consciousness of love and law, and that we use that to live powerful, meaningful, productive lives while we're here on planet Earth, although we are eternal beings. And if we could say something like that, I think people would be okay with us. You know, some wouldn't. Some would want us to be like them. But most people, I think, would say, well, you're on a path that serves you. So congratulations. Live your life well. And I say to you, if this is your path, whatever your path is, congratulations. You're on your way to God. Thank you. I love you very much. Hey.